Okay, time to talk about painting with a little bit more complexity. I'll be covering how I like to paint and layer things and talk about things like brushwork, brush economy, values, blending, appeal, all that stuff. We're going to try to cover this with a very simple reference, such as an apple. And the reason I'm choosing an apple as opposed to painting a head or a face at this point is because, well, if you can't paint a basic apple, you probably can't paint a face very well either. So I'd say pick simple things first, get really good at that, understand the basics of brushwork, layering, blending, color, and then graduate towards more complex things such as a human face. Ideally, you're looking at something in real life. However, for the course, we're just going to be using this image. If you do have an apple and some decent lighting, set it up on your table. I think you'd probably have a better result that way because we have two eyes that are sending two images to our brain, and our brain is interpreting that with depth, volume, and form in a way that a 2D image just can't replicate. So we're going to do a quick sketch of this first, and then take that sketch and paint underneath it. We'll do that for a couple of them and try some without the sketch at all. But first, let's kind of talk about different methods of drawing. Now, you might have seen maybe demonstrations where you'll see the teacher or an artist kind of hold up the pen and do all these accurate measurements and, the right angles and perfect kind of relationships. That's all good and all that, but we're going to go ahead and skip that and do a little bit more of a simple approach. We've talked about the sphere, so we're just going to draw a sphere, make that the sort of first thing we do. So go ahead and draw a basic circle. It could be kind of wonky, stylized if you want. The point isn't accurate forms. The point here is to communicate the form, to feel like it's a three-dimensional apple, conveying the illusion of light, the mirage of light. So if this is our sphere, we know that there's a bit of a pinch going into the apple. It's as though you're kind of pressing into a piece of clay and the form is kind of going inward. So we're just going to replicate that. So make a little point here. It's like a belly button of the apple with a stem coming out, and it goes like this, and the wireframe of that area is going to go up and do a little something like that. And this is very important because we need to know exactly where the forms are going to go. If one of the faces are pointing away from the light, obviously it won't receive light, it will be in shadow. And so that's why we do these wireframe practices. Okay, so this side will also be in shadow. Very simple, very basic. We don't want to get too complex with this just yet. Sort of sketch in where that core shadow is going to be. And if we see in the reference, it kind of does something like that. Let's go ahead and kind of scribble that in real quick. All right. And then we could just lay in a quick cast shadow, something like this. In fact, for the sake of the demo, we're going to ignore what's happening in the reference and just make that a full shadow and just kind of loosely sketch that in. Okay. And then up here, you'll notice where this part dips in, it's in shadow. We're going to put a little bit of a shadow here too. And the reason we're doing this with just pencil right now is so that we can become familiar with the forms and how the light is actually acting on the forms here. And of course, there's the stem, kind of indicate that as a little cylinder. Just a little cylinder we can erase out like that. Okay. I did do this on a gray background. That's going to help kind of figure out where the forms are by introducing light. So if we just grab a new layer underneath that line drawing, just grab some white and take a peek at the reference and just see where that highlight is and just put it right there. And just by doing that, the thing looks three-dimensional if you just zoom out. You could even emphasize that with an airbrush. Just by doing that, it looks 3D. All right, so now that we've explored the forms of it, let's use that information by laying in some color and painting it. So I'm gonna get rid of that highlight. I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna actually redraw it to just be the line work, and I'll just draw it right on top of this. So we've internalized what the forms are just as a quick pass, and now we're going to do another pass that we're gonna paint on. And I'm going to keep my lines pretty straight, very simple. When you use straight lines like this for something that's curved, you'll actually have to sit there and choose where the apexes of these straight lines are going to create points. And you could even simplify parts like that. The more you do that, the more stylized your painting will look. Basic lines. Kind of like a low poly version of the sketch. Yeah, we can go ahead and get rid of that initial drawing. Here, we could talk a little bit about composition. This was actually cropped from a bigger image regarding the reference. Notice I didn't make the top part of it too close to the top of the stem. That would be way too much tension, unless that's what you want. But for me, I just want to have enough breathing room on all sides of it to just appreciate the apple comfortably. Whereas if we put the side part of the canvas really close here, there's too much tension, and then we're going to lose that comfort. But again, if that's what you're trying to do, by all means, go for it. But just know and keep in mind that if you want a comfortable viewing experience, you want even spacing just so that we're kind of relaxed. And that's something to remember for your illustrations. The more tension you create between shapes and objects and forms, the less relaxed it'll feel. Crop right through that shadow and just rotate that, because I'm apparently too lazy just to draw another horizontal. Roughly square. That's perfectly fine. Now we have our line drawing.